Once you have a clean and sound substrate and you've got your cracks repaired, it would be time to either prime or put the base coat down. They're both optional. I always prime an interior floor, and the reason is because when people are building houses, typically they don't protect the concrete very well, and there will be paint that's sprayed around the outside edge, or they'll use a marker to write things on what size cutouts. They'll spill things on there, they'll use sealer on it, they'll do a number of different things that creates it's not a uniform surface for me to go over. So if I put a coating on top of it, flooded the color, in the areas that it's sealed or painted, so to speak, that it's penetrated into the concrete, that's going to take longer to dry than it would be the parts that are more porous, and I'm going to create a visible distinction between colors. So whenever we're doing an interior floor, no matter how good you can prep it, I always recommend priming it. And we have got two separate ways to do that. This is an adhesion enhancer. It's an ionic bonding agent. It's actually great for coat-to-coat adhesion. I recommend using this anytime you're going over something that's completely sealed. Glazed tiles, Formica when you're doing the countertop system. Anything that's got a sealer on it, stamped concrete, concrete itself that's just sealed, maybe an acid stain job. This product here, we get it as clean as we can get it, and we're going to spray this on. It's in the format for the flooring, it's used 50-50 with water, so it's diluted 1-to-1. Put that in a pump can, spray it on the entire surface, scrub it around with a broom, and let it sit to the point where it's starting to dry up, and then we're going to mop it off to clean water with a mop. That's how you use the adhesion enhancer. You let it dry, and it itself forms a covalent bond with the substrate and leaves an ionic charge that pulls anything that you put in over the top of it. Promotes coat-to-coat adhesion up to 10 times as much as normal. It's perfect for reseals. It's also perfect for going over, like I said, sealed surfaces with anything. So that's when we would use this. Anytime that we've got something that's porous, I oftentimes use, this is the resin 221. It's a component of the flooring system. It's actually the glue that mixes in with the bagged materials. So it's 2 quarts of resin, 4 quarts of water to a 50-pound bag. Can be adjusted a little bit up or down depending on temperature and humidity. But this is it's 100% acrylic. It's what we use for the bag mixes. However, I use it for a number of other things too. I use it for priming porous substrates. For instance, if you started troweling it out and you saw some outgassing, little pinhole bubbles developing here and there, what's happening is the concrete's porous and it's sucking the moisture out of the coating itself and creating, it's drying out too quickly. It's hard to trowel it out. It's creating bubbles. We're going to stop what we're doing there, and we're going to take this and mix it 2-to-1 with water, and we're going to prime the surface with it. Many times you've got a situation where you've got some black asbestos-based glue that is not a candidate to be removed because it's asbestos-based, and you don't want to create that type of a situation in the air and hazard this for yourself. So we can put this down straight over the top of that, and this actually melts into that and creates a barrier that you can go over. It would be impossible to get that clean. Obviously, the best thing is to remove it completely, but if you've got that black asbestos-based glue, that's really not an option. So any other glues, the yellow type glues, the carpet glues, those need to be taken off completely, but this can be used directly over the other one straight. It makes a very good primer. Sometimes you need to put a couple of coats on. It can be sprayed, can be rolled, but again, I always recommend doing it interior. And exterior, it's just an added insurance policy. It also buys you time in the summer if it's very, very hot out and your concrete's very hot. If you sprayed some of this ahead of yourself, it's going to cool that concrete down. It's going to create a much better substrate for you to go over the top of. So these are what we're going to use for primers. If you've got any questions, again, you can refer back to the manual, or you can get a hold of somebody at corporate, which is 877-669-1110. And then we'll move on to the base coat. A base coat is not always necessary. There are many, many looks that do not require a base coat. If you're doing a slate look, If you're doing a wood grain look, if you're doing just a straight texture, maybe even with borders, you wouldn't need to base coat unless you had some issues with the concrete. If you had cool decking, obviously you need to level that up. Putting a base coat down levels that up. If you've got exposed aggregate, obviously you're going to need to base coat. If you're going over a tile, you're going to need to do a base coat. Anything that's going to require you to level the surface, a base coat is good to use. It's troweled out. It's comes in a 50-pound bag. It can be pigmented in any color you want with a dispersion color. Typically, I like to use gray because I like gray grout lines, but you can do any color you want. It's not a true self-leveling agent. It's not pumped out. Doesn't self-level. It needs to be troweled out, and it's designed to be troweled very thin. So if you were filling something in that had a lot of dimensions, like a heavy exposed aggregate, or if you were going over a second floor and you were using the lath system, then you're going to need to do probably 2 base coats, one to fill it in and one to level up the surface very smooth. So that would be what you're going to use your base mix for. Now, I'll talk a bit more about going over the second floor. If you've got a wood substrate, you're going to need to take the anti-fracture membrane and paintbrush it. It's hydro membrane. It's a blue anti-fracture. You're going to paint it on the whole thing or roll it on, and then you're going to staple stucco lath into that using a lot of staples, about 9 per square foot, and then you're going to fill that in with base. Obviously, you're fairly thick at that point, and you're going to want to base it twice. But again, a base mix is not always required if the concrete's good, if the concrete's acceptable as far as color goes, then we can just go over the top of it. Also, anytime you're using a very thin grout line, it's typical that you do not need a base coat. I like to base coat travertines because of the texturing method that I use. I also like to base coat if I'm going to be doing a flagstone because you're doing a very wide grout line that you're typically going to want fairly light, a light gray or a light tan. So anytime you're dictating a light color for a grout line, a base coat's going to be required as far as that goes too. And again, the base mix is just designed to be troweled out very, very thin, and it does relax to a degree. It's not a true self-leveler, but it does relax. So you trowel it out, a lot of your trowel lines will disappear right out of it. So we're going to go ahead and mix up the base mix, and everybody's going to base coat 2 boards. We're each going to do 5 boards altogether, but you're going to base coat 2 of them. So we'll go ahead and mix that up. The mix is 2 quarts of resin and 3 to 4 quarts of water and whatever color you desire. I personally like to do 2 caps per bag when I'm mixing any of the colors, but that's just what I do. And if I do everything consistently every single time, I never have any questions. So you can do 3 caps, you can do 1 cap. It's whatever you decide to do, but be consistent or be very good about writing things down to make sure you know what you did if you ever had to match it at a future date. So we'll go ahead and get that mixing done right now.